Well, hey, Darren, how's it going?
It's going great, Andre. And again, thank you for your time here. The new movie that we were connected about is Baby Frankenstein. When was it completed?
I know when it was shot. I mean, we did that movie about 3 years ago. I don't know when John ended up finalizing it and getting, even a festival cut finished, because I think it was him and a small group of people, even in post. But it was a number of years ago, and I know he festivaled it around for a little bit, which is always fun. And then, things kind of go dormant for a while, and then lo and behold, this, movie that, you would hope see the light of day one day ends up getting a release and can go on, VOD and have the world have a chance to check out, a character we've never seen before, which is, always kind of fun.
Was it a movie that you were asked to do, or did you have to do a traditional audition?
No, it was, when you're in sort of the realm, for lack of better words, that I exist in, you get asked to be in a lot of films that people are trying to make, right?
Right.
For one or more reasons. Whether you meet a filmmaker at a convention or at a screening, or they just contact you cold. And usually there are a lot of things you can't do. And then sometimes there's some things you just shouldn't do. And then, which we've run into some of those. And then, but when a friend asks you to, kind of look at something and see if you'd be interested, then you kind of look at it through a different lens, of course, no matter, what it is. And that's the case with Baby Frankenstein. I had two good friends of mine that lived in LA, but were in Northeast Pennsylvania at the time, TJ Rotel and Denise Pantoa, who were the actual driving force behind the physical production of Baby Frankenstein. They were up in Northeast Pennsylvania because that's where he's from. And they ran into John and realized he's a filmmaker. And I guess the conversation started that he had a project he was trying to do. They were like, well, we're production people. Let's make a movie. And he said, well, I've got some financing backing from, a group of brothers, and we're trying to figure it out. And that was all way before I even came into the conversation. But apparently at some point in their hangouts, my name came up, and, they reached out, and my friends were asking me if I would be interested in even looking at it. And, from that personal, connection, sometimes you look at it from a different lens.
Right.
And I'm a huge fan of, small, local, regional filmmakers trying to get something done, because if that's what you want to do, you've got to get something done. And I always champion kind of, small and local filmmakers as much as I can. So much so that I created a TV show that Ryan Lambert and I hosted on Nerdist Network called Short Ends to celebrate filmmakers and making shorts and things like that, and trying to showcase their wares. So something like this, when you have an opportunity and, it's kind of fun and you like the script, or, I asked my buddy, I was like, look, does me coming into this, one, help the movie at all, or does it totally detract from it? Because sometimes you could be totally the wrong person just because you shouldn't fit. And then two, does it help you two, either personally or professionally, or help this thing? And the answers to both were in the affirmative, apparently. So,
Right.
We worked it out, and I read the script, and, I kind of got it was a longer script, and it was a longer movie, and it was actually a much longer shoot schedule. And then as I was flying to Pennsylvania to work on it, they had realized, because of budget constraints and time and locations, that they had to kind of whack it down a little bit. And, so we landed and learned that now, instead of a 14-day shoot, it's a 7-day shoot. And, which is a big difference. And, pagers are coming out, some of the, extra stuff that's just not feasible in this new kind of model are gone. And, we just kind of end up jumping right into this story of what you see on the screen now. And, kudos to everybody from my friends, TJ and Denise, to, John Yankondi, the filmmaker, and the producers, and even the crew that they brought in, because they had to cram a feature length worth of stuff into 7 days, which is not easy to do.
Absolutely.
And then you can kind of do that, I guess, but then to end up with something that's semi-coherent or enjoyable at the end result, is a task in and of itself. But I've always said I've been doing some Baby Frankenstein conversations for the last week or two, and I definitely put all of the um, pats on the back to like my friends TJ and Denise, who were also in the movie. They wore like 11 different hats making this movie, right? And not only trying to keep the production schedule going and running the crew, and they were also art department and prop department and craft service, and dealing with weirdos like me, having to be around. I
didn't call you a weirdo. You just called yourself one for the
That's right. But kudos, and especially all the other cast members who were in, a lot more, like Ian and Cora, and because they had to cram so much in, and you're not, of course, doing it in sequence. You're not doing it in order, and so they've got to bounce around and try to keep it somewhere in their heads of what's going on in the story, which is always hard to do for the actors. And then you can't discount Rance Nix, who's actually playing the character of Baby Frankenstein, because he's the one that not only had to get into 2 or 3 hours of makeup every day, he had to perform in that and kind of keep it together and kind of play a character that we've never seen before, which is also kind of rad. But, before all that, I read the script, and it gave me, the thing I pulled out of it was the obvious stuff. It's a neat kids adventure romp through the neighborhood type thing. Mm-hmm. And that story was even bigger in the original context. But I also dig because everybody thinks this is a genre movie. And is it a genre movie? It is, but which genre? And, everybody automatically equates it just because of the title with some sort of subcategory in horror, mm-hmm. because it is a creature feature. But to me, it's got more sci-fi notes and tones to it, and that's where I connect to it, because I'm a sci-fi nerd, and along with being the weirdo on a set, I guess. But
I figured that with being within the Hardwick universe right there, that you had to like sci-fi and horror both.
It helps. And look, when you're around, the that whole Nerdist crew, either during Hardwick times or after Hardwick times, when Legendary bought all that, like, I don't hold a candle to most of those people that work, in that realm, because they know their stuff. It is incredible. I feel ashamed that I'm not as knowledgeable when I'm around folks that really know their stuff like that. But with Baby Frank, I love the sci-fi, a mid-century company from the 40s or 50s that create an automaton that gets lost over time, and then they find, a kid finds it in the attic. That's just a fun. It's bringing in mid-century sci-fi movies with the 80s kind of kid neighborhood romp that just turned into sort of this on purpose, worked out well in the end kind of, the camp that goes with it, but the genuine, heartfelt kind of authenticity that actually ended up coming through, kind of balances it all out. And, is it the most, no one wants to make the most polished movie, because this isn't a Marvel thing. Those are way too polished. And I love the indie feel of it. I love kind of the organic nature of what you actually see. And kudos to everybody that worked on it, including the cast and my pals that ran the production, and John and all the other people, because I really had the easiest thing to do. I just had to fly in. I got to stay at my friend's parents' house, and his mom made me lunch and dinner. And then I got to hang out on a set while all these people were running around trying to cram, a full day of shooting into, not a full day. And, they worked long hours in many locations, and I just needed to be there, jump in when they needed me, do something, jump out, let other people do something. And it was just kind of a whirlwind for a few days.
Mission accomplished. And totally different path here. And question, a lot of people who start their career 2000 or after, their IMDb page is absolutely complete. It lists their rehearsals, it lists their demos, it lists any idea they ever had. People who started decades ago, usually they can look at their IMDb page and went, doesn't have that movie I made in Slovenia, doesn't have these commercials. Your credits are unbelievable, because you starred in so many, or guest starred rather, in so many seminal television shows. Would you say it's complete, or is it still missing a lot of stuff?
Well, of course, to me, it's still missing a lot of stuff. There's a lot of shows. Look, yes, I was very fortunate enough to do a ton of different shows. I always sort of defined my television career, which was fairly robust as a kid. You know, in addition to the guest spots, which were amazing, because let's take the guest spots first. Like there's kind of two parallel paths here. You know, when you're in the industry and you're a kid, there's a finite amount of kids that are in the industry. It was a lot at the time, and you're all reading for the same stuff, and you're all auditioning together for the same exact stuff every day. And about 20% of that group of kids does the majority of the work. And I happen to be fortunate enough that I think to be in that 20%. But you also got to remember there was only 3 networks.
Yeah.
So there's a lot less programming. And so that kind of crunches down into a critical kind of, you know, mass anyway. And then cable came in the 90s and it was just stuff all over the place, and there was a lot more stuff for kids. But, you know, 70s and 80s, it was tough. And I feel fortunate enough to even do the amount of work that I did. But then on the series regular side, you know, I don't know if I technically lament it or celebrate the fact that my TV trajectory was an individual that did literally 5 or 6 television shows that only went one season instead of one show that goes 5 or 6. That's a worldwide name and everybody knows it, and you're known for that one thing.
Do you mean the Ted McGinley principle of television?
Oh, that's sort of I think that's unfair to Ted, but yeah, when he shows up, a show dies. Yeah. You know, when Ted shows up, your show's on the way down. Apparently, I think that's really unfair to Ted McGinley, who I've actually met in my life numerous times. I don't think it's as bad as jumping the shark. I think I'd rather have Ted McGinley on my show than actually jump the shark. So yeah, we're all you youngins out there that don't know those terms or individuals, Google them.
A lot of people don't realize that Ted McGinley was on Happy Days during the Jump the Shark season. Don't mean to slag the guy. Hey,
you made the connection, Darren. I didn't. You made the connection. But he's too good looking. Why would you not have him on your show? I mean, literally, he's Ted McGinley. What a face.
And sorry to cut you off there. Another thing that I see on your filmography that blows me away is Wolfman's got Nards, and I see the shirt that my wife is wearing. I don't know if she's going to walk closer to the camera. Oh, she's walking closer to the camera.
Oh, I see it. Hey! Great shirt. I've seen one of those before.
You've been stuck in my wardrobe as an adult.
That is awesome.
That shirt has been in countless photos at signings and autographs and all that, and concerts. Jerry Only from the Misfits, is that one of them? Whatever it is. You have that great documentary about the Monster Squad. I'm curious when in your life it went from being, I did that film, but take me seriously now, I do other stuff too. Hey, that's pretty cool. I was in the Monster Squad and it's got legs and it's going to keep going.
You know, that's sort of kind of all jumbled, you know, kind of together, but also separated over, you know, 2 decades really. You know, doing the movie at the time, you know, I was doing a ton of television and series and stuff that only went one season and guest spots. And then you get this big studio motion picture that's full of monsters and creature effects and things blowing up. And, you know, it's arguably the biggest thing that, you know, I had done up to the time, or even today, you know, on the scope and scale and budget wise. And then you hope it's going to be a success and come out. And, you know, right after filming Monster Squad, I had already, you know, sort of had an established kind of TV kind of trajectory. Like I said before, I've said trajectory a million times already, but I went right into
a $20 SAT word, so keep it going.
Right. I went right into other stuff, even right after filming Monster Squad, even before it came out. So I was fairly lucky to already be fairly established enough to where I, you know, had some legs. And then whether Monster Squad comes out and is a box office hit, and, you know, there's action figures and sequels and, you know, all this other stuff, or the reality that happened is that it was an absolute box office tanker. You know, whether that actually affected my career or not, who knows? Because I went right into other television shows. I mean, I went right into a giant TV show for 2 seasons on the Fox network on one of its inaugural shows when it was a brand new network.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can't say that, it was necessarily a diminishing aspect that it was a failure. It was just something like, oh, that sucks. We were hoping it was this giant thing because we wanted action figures and sequels and animated series and, all this other stuff. And it didn't happen. I think it's unfair, that, back in the day, box office returns are the only, value commodity, only value given to a commodity like a film. It's different today, right? But fast forward, 19 years, those Monster Squad fans that had connected with that movie, whether it was the 11 of them that saw it at the movie theaters or, the legions that got it at their local video store or recorded it on a blank VHS off of HBO and then shared it around the neighborhood. We didn't know that was happening. We thought it was dead and gone and we were all on other stuff. Now you'd run into people in college and later on, that knew that movie. Oh my God, I love that movie. And I was like, oh, wow, you know that movie. That's interesting. Until the spring of 2006. And when Alamo Drafthouse, I'm wearing my Alamo hat. Yeah. My Alamo Drafthouse put together that first cast reunion screening in 2006. And many things happened that night. One, the fan base had a place to go and celebrate with each other. They sold out 2, late night screenings on a Saturday night. The internet was a thing now. Early social media was a thing. Chat rooms were a thing, and the fans could start connecting with each other, and it just started this groundswell. And without that Alamo Drafthouse event at the very first Alamo in Austin, Texas, we wouldn't be sitting here today talking about Monster Squad still, or we wouldn't be talking about Wolfman's Got Nards, a documentary, because that was the seminal moment. So that was a very interesting time. And then we started doing conventions and appearances and screenings. Boy, that 35 millimeter print that Adam Hewlin and Matt Panacci owned went all over the country and the world for almost 10 years. It was rented almost every weekend. And that was something interesting. And that's sort of that dynamic, along with constantly on a constant basis meeting these fans that would come up to you at a convention or an appearance or just hit you up on social and explain their experience with that movie of how and why it meant so much to them. I started to realize and discussed it with, Ryan and Ashley and other people, is like, these kids, they're not kids anymore, but these kids connected with this movie for some reason or some way that never left them. Mm-hmm. And it has made an impact on them as human beings and has stayed with them as they go into their adolescence and their teenage years and their adult life and even their professional life. So years of hearing those amazing stories, that's what sort of, sparked the idea to make a documentary, but the documentary is not about the Monster Squad, the movie. It's not a making of doc.
Right.
It's not a Where Are They Now doc, although we cover some of those two things. It's not, a movie that, failed, comes up a good bit. The documentary ended up being a relationship story about the relationship a film has with its fans and the relationship that the fans have with their favorite film, no matter what that film is, but it happens to be told through the lens of Monster Squad fans. And that was very important. It wasn't about us. It wasn't about the movie. We've seen all that. And God knows you've seen, us a lot. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to, as the force behind the doc, I wanted to turn that focus back on the fans, tell their stories, because their stories were the story. And that story is why this movie was not allowed to die in their guts and in their hearts and in their cul-de-sacs and in their tree houses and in their garages. And why they're the reason it's been kept alive for 30 years. And that's an interesting dynamic about connection with film. And then it leads to a whole bunch of other conversations. Is this a cult film? Is it a cult classic? What is cult? Has that changed? Was this movie a failure, or was it always just something gigantic to these kids that, saw it and were affected by it? A lot of people grew up and until they meet you or you see it at a screening, don't know it was a box office failure. They just thought it was a huge movie this summer that they saw 3 times. And because they don't know, because they're 12 and they don't read the trades and they don't read, the studio reports and things like that. And so it was a fascinating journey to kind of investigate and analyze all of that and get so much great stuff, in the 10 months that we were shooting the doc.
Well, three
which happened to take place all in the 30th anniversary year. So it was very, very strategically timed.
very well timed. And do I have time for three quick questions?
You have all the time. You get plenty to ask away, man. I'm not in a rush right now.
Okay. Some actors go, yeah, I don't want to tell you until it's out. And others go, oh, I'll tell you. Do you know what your next release project is going to be?
I do. It's the documentary, number one, because we're just closing out the distribution deal. We had some bumps and some roller coasters over the last year getting the actual release out, but that announcement should be coming very soon. So hang in there. Please follow me or follow at the Squad Doc to get those infos. But interestingly enough, one project, of course, in this weird kind of pandemic shutdown time of production and really the world, my close buddy who is, now a development and production partner of mine, Henry McComas, who actually made the doc with me, who was working at Pilgrim Media Group at the time. I got very lucky to get teamed up with my production team that actually made the doc, and Henry's the main driving force on the other side of that for me with Wolfman's Got Nards. He's a very creative guy. He's also very technically skilled, with equipment and gear and editing and camera work. But he's a very creative, development-minded guy. And he has a script that we've been shopping around, and the team of producers that are on it, along with myself, we're sort of in the first phase of getting that feature, financed and looking at, when and how we can actually shoot his directorial debut. So that's the next thing on the burner. I've been dealing with the documentary for the last, year and a half of, kind of piece together this distribution deal. Now that that's sort of getting off and running, hopefully in the next couple, minutes, I get to turn, the front burner focus on this next thing. Cause we've been working on that for about 7 or 8 months, and, it's just a long process. And, and then COVID hits, and, just have this whole thing of now the production world is completely upside down. So we've got to figure out new ways to get things done and new things you have to deal with. But it's a very interesting story, and that's one of the main things. And then added to that, I've always got a handful of projects that are either, burning a hole in your pocket or, filling up pages in your notebook.
Mm-hmm.
You always have a running slate of things. And that's what I set up my company to do, is not just be that creative or that face or name that says, hey, I've written something, Mr. Studio, look at it and please make it. I get just as much enjoyment out of putting the pieces together or working on somebody else's creative project, whether I can lend my, kind of experience or my business acumen or my creative acumen or development kind of, experience in there. That's fun too. So I'm sort of an all around type of hub of activity that just wants to get projects put together and made and out to the world. This has been a kind of, an enjoyable last month with the Baby Frankenstein release, which is, sort of out of the blue, but, that's kind of awesome. And, a lot of people jumped on and wanted to talk about that because they've all got a chance to see it. And honestly, I never, expected, was hoping that, someone's film gets out to the world, but that's a great win. And, for John and all the people involved in that. So hopefully they get some enjoyment out of seeing their movie released. And I get to be a little part of that. So that's fun. But there's always projects bubbling up. Those are the two main things, is now working on the actual release of the documentary, promoting that, marketing that, not traveling around right now for that. But announcements pending soon, and hopefully announcements on that other project, because that's a neat feature story.
It's very refreshing to see that you reinvented yourself from just being an actor as a kid to actually having your hands in all these different projects in different formats, different titles, kind of like you were talking about your friend before who had basically a dozen hats to wear while making Baby Frankenstein. And one of the things that you're now doing, besides the acting, producing, directing, etc., is hosting events. You're at the level where people, it's not just a screening, it's people get to go, wow, I also get to see that guy who was in it or had an impact. And I'm curious about a screening that you hosted a couple of years ago where Dokken performed. Did you have any interactions with Mr. Dokken? And you can feel free to plead the fifth.
No, I did. So that was the same. It was sort of a side event connected to a giant convention chain called Wizard World.
Yes.
And this was in Philadelphia. And Ryan Lambert and I had, this was during the 30th anniversary year. We were invited to Wizard World to, sit in our booth and sign stuff for Monster Squad. And then, we signed other stuff too, because Ryan gets a bunch of Kids Incorporated stuff all the time. Yeah. But you gotta plug the sequin jackets sometime. And so a friend of ours, Josh Goldblum, is a Philly guy, and he's sort of this kind of awesome kind of, punk dude that, we became friends with, I think earlier the year before. And he was holding an event at this bar, literally called The Underground, which is below street level in downtown Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. And it was this great space, right? I love this. It was an amazing, I just want to go and hang out at that bar and watch live music, because it's really like a live music venue. And he had been setting up a kind of live commentary screening of Dream Warriors. Mm-hmm. Nightmare on Elm Street Dream Warriors. 3 Dream Warriors, right? It's 3, yeah. And he was bringing Chuck Russell and Heather Langenkamp in to sit on the stage and do a live commentary with, 300 or 400 people in the bar while they projected Dream Warriors on a sheet that was hanging from the ceiling, which is rad. And so Ryan and I ended up becoming hosts of that event. And so, because we had done some live commentary, doing some stuff. And so we got to do the live commentary with Chuck Russell and Heather Langenkamp. What's great about that is that was during the time I also had my production crew for the doc with me. So we got to document that event, and we have it a little bit in the documentary. And we got to interview Chuck Russell and Heather Langenkamp to talk about genre and legacy and nostalgia and, cult films and things like that. And they gave a great interview. And that was really one of the earlier events that we had actually documented. And that interview with Chuck and Heather actually kind of set the tone of what we wanted all of our on the road stuff to kind of look and feel like. So that was a great event. And, thanks to Josh Goldblum to, inviting us. But yes, so what was rad is we got to do that live commentary. And then when the movie ended, Don Dokken came out and did an acoustic concert. And of course, because he did the sound, he did the song, and these new Dream Warriors. So here's Don Dokken, and we met him in the back and got to hang out for a little bit. But he's like, has no idea who we are, but that's fine. Of course, I know who Don Dokken is because he was the guy that's the eponymous band leader of a band that scared the crap out of me when I was a kid, because it was way too heavy and way too metal and way too, way too cool for me.
They scared Freddy Krueger as well, so you're not the only one.
So I was a little bit not in the metal crowd when I was in like 6th grade, when Dokken was huge, but I had friends that were, so that was awesome. I would actually love to have an old vintage Dokken concert t-shirt now, so maybe I can find one just because of that event. But he told one of the greatest stories I've ever heard about them performing with Kiss and on stage. It was great because he was warming up. They were the warm-up act for Kiss at this giant arena or something, and he finished the concert and said, "You ready for Kiss?" And everybody's like, "Yeah." He's like, "All right." And he grabbed one of like the towels, like the Kiss towels, and was waving it around and like, "Here's Kiss," and like he threw it out in the audience. Dokken, the band, walks off the stage, and I can only imagine kind of the image of walking off stage while Kiss is getting ready to come on, and Gene Simmons is standing there, who, as everybody may or may not know, owns everything that has to do with Kiss. He's in charge of everything. And he stopped Don Dokken and grabbed him and goes, "Hey man, did you just throw a Kiss towel in the audience?" And Dokken was like, "Yeah, man." I was like riling him up and threw it out there. He goes, "Those towels are $15. And Dokken was like, "What are you talking about?" And so when Gene Simmons cut Dokken their opening band check, he deducted $15. And I'm like, that's the awesomest heavy metal story I've ever heard in my life. And I'm not even a metal kid, but I was like, that's metal.
Now, here's the incredible part of that story. I've heard a member of the band Danger Danger or Trickster, I think it's Trickster, tell that same exact story, that they threw 3 towels into the crowd.
Oh, that's $45.
I'm actually interviewing Don Dokken tomorrow, coincidentally.
Oh, that is awesome.
So I'm going to ask him about that and the screening, and we'll try and plug the documentary as well within that interview. So
yeah, it was, I mean, he may or may not remember that night, but I sure do, because, you know, I got to meet Don Dokken, you know, who still kind of rocked it out on a bar stool with an acoustic guitar. So to hear Dream Warriors live by Dokken himself with, you know, in a bar under the streets of Philadelphia, I mean, who gets to do that?
Not me, that's for sure. So in closing, Andre, any last words for the kids?
No, you know, hey, thanks for being there. Thanks for supporting. You know, we were here mainly, you know, to talk about the new release, Baby Frankenstein. So if you like local filmmakers, you know, regional productions and, you know, indie films and low, but please go support those people, you know, and you can kind of rabbit hole down on your iTunes or on, you know, your Sony PlayStation VODs, wherever you get your content. And, you know, while we're all at home with, you know, not a lot to do, and, you know, don't watch the obvious stuff. Go grab a title that you may or may not have an opportunity to see, you know, in different times. And, you know, that really gives a shout out of support to, you know, filmmakers that are really trying to get things done. And then, you know, if you give a rip about me or any of the stuff that I'm on, please follow me on my socials on Twitter and on Instagram. And if you're a Monster Squad fan or you're anticipating the release of Wolfman's Got Nards, the documentary, that's at the Squad Doc. Like I said, there should be announcements coming very soon. And then, you know, if you've got, you know, anything to ask, hit me up on social, or, you know, hope to see you, you know, when the world starts turning, we can come to your town and hang out and watch cool movies.
Can't thank you enough for your generosity right here. Keep up the great work you're doing. Looking forward to the doc, and have a great rest of the day there.
Thanks, Darren. I appreciate it. Thanks. And your wife got a rad shirt, because who knew a lame old piece of, you know, wardrobe would turn into a piece of film iconography. So I love all the Stephen King Rules shirts. It's great.
Not me and not Jason Hervey. Cool. Thanks again, Andre. Take care.
All right, Darren. Bye.
Paltrocast.